What would you do if one of the strongest tornadoes ever was tearing through your neighborhood?
Alright. About it,
Destroying your school, your hospital, and before you even had time to process what was happening, it vanished.
That was it right there. That's what's left of it. And you can see all the housing additions that are just all
A massive tornado tears through central Oklahoma. Just to the east of the Oklahoma City metro area, the sparsely populated forests near Lake Thunderbird lessen the impact as the EF4 tornado carves through the terrain. Sadly, 2 people would be killed, but this destruction did not come without warning. In fact, a well-forecasted, multi-day tornado outbreak was in progress, and it was all due to this. This is a trough, a wave of low pressure sweeping across the United States. This trough is fairly wide and moving quite slowly, allowing specific ingredients in the atmosphere to conglomerate in one area, such as 1. CAPE, the convective available potential energy, or the energy needed for storms to form and persist. 2. Wind shear, strong low-level winds which allow storms to organize and spin. And 3. Moisture, needed to spread heat and fuel storms. Forecasters at the National Weather Service noticed these ingredients and put out a plethora of outlooks for the following days. So far, the outlooks for intense tornadoes have been correct, but the next day, May 20th, was looking more interesting than scary. A 10% outlook for tornadoes was drawn around a corridor from Oklahoma to Arkansas. From an overall perspective, the next day would be one of the more unsure days of the whole system. Moore, Oklahoma is a pretty average suburban community from the outside, essentially just a sprawling appendage to the much larger Oklahoma City. But any resident that has lived there for a while knows Moore is anything but average, and it all usually comes down to one date. May 3rd, 1999, one of the strongest tornadoes ever tears through the heart of Moore, Oklahoma. May 3rd became sort of a staple for locals. The destruction was unheard of, and the community took years to recover. Other tornadoes continued to occur in Moore, such as in 2003 and in 2010, but nothing could ever compare to the sheer devastation of May 3rd.
Do not take the extra minute or two.
I want to take a brief moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Displate. Like many of you, I've dealt with the limitations of your average poster. That's why I've partnered with Displate. These aren't standard posters. They're high-quality metal prints that solve tons of problems with modern wall art. If you're in a rental space or don't want to damage your walls, Displates mount without any tools or holes, using a clever magnetic system that leaves no marks. The print quality is exceptional, especially with their licensed collections. With over 2 million designs available, there's something meaningful for basically every space. I really like the black and white Storm one. Right now, Displate is offering their biggest discount of the year, up to 44% off of your order, including their new texture designs for the first time ever. Just visit the link on screen or use code TornadoTRX at checkout. Now back to the video. The sun is shining in Oklahoma. The 10% risk for tornadoes remains over the state, but things really aren't looking too extreme, and it appeared there was nothing special going on at face value. However, underneath the surface, the atmosphere wasn't playing by the rules. Currently, the wind shear, which provided storms with rotation, was remarkably unimpressive, especially near the surface, meaning any storm that would form would have trouble rotating and as a result have trouble forming a tornado. But sometimes strange things occur. Experts just didn't know it yet. Currently, a cold front sprawls across the risk area. Colliding with the cold front, another boundary called a dry line sits. These fronts allow storms to form along them, and at 1 o'clock, multiple cells begin to form along the dry line in South Oklahoma. Most storm chasers are situated to the south of the metro area, where these forming storms seem to have the best chance, if any, of producing a tornado. Unfortunately for these chasers, the storms are struggling a lot. Even though the high amounts of energy in the atmosphere allow them to form and mature, the wind shear is just too weak and they are unable to rotate strongly. Up towards the north, multiple rain showers pop up fairly close to the two colliding boundaries, making for a rather sporadic mess of air. moving in all sorts of directions around this area. However, a secret pocket of rapidly moving air, essentially an anomaly, was intensifying around the cells, and forecasters had no idea. As the cells continued to grow, the northern storms of the cluster shoved the southern cell away from its north motion to a more southeast motion. All of this unpredictable atmospheric chaos was doing something very strange to the southern storm, and a freak accident was about to occur. Southwest of Moore, Jennifer Vargas steps outside the Newcastle, Oklahoma Walmart, where she looks up and spots clouds ahead, rapidly carouseling. She begins to film what she's seeing. Just 30 seconds later, Newcastle law enforcement also notices the rotation, and tornado sirens in the general area go off. Across the highway, in another parking lot, amateur storm chaser Charles Cook is filming the rotation as well. That's when he notices a small nub protruding from the clouds. As the funnel cloud continues to stretch towards the ground, tiny swirls of wind can be seen brushing the field in front of him. The tornado is incredibly weak, knocking down small trees and damaging roofs. It also struggles to actually condense to the ground. Charles records as the tornado fully forms multiple times before picking back up. Michael Lynn, another storm chaser, also notices the rotation behind a tree line. He begins to drive down the interstate, and as the funnel comes into view, he watches as, without warning, the vortex plants firmly to the ground.
Maybe more, there looks like there may be another tornado. There looks like there may be another tornado to my north. I have to stop. This thing is getting bigger and bigger. This thing is getting large. It's moving fast. I'm all over this. We got power flashes. We got a major tornado west of.
In under 30 seconds, the tornado went from hardly brushing the ground to a thick stovepipe launching debris. It doesn't stop intensifying as it crosses the road right in front of Michael.
Be in the shelter. I can't move. I've got this thing. I'm west of this tornado. This thing is huge. It's taking the May 3rd path. It's going right into Moore. Call her right now. Bye.
Directly in its path is a neighborhood of a large country club homes. As it impacts the first home in the neighborhood, something incredibly unexpected happens. The tornado sweeps the entire home off of its foundation. Grass and soil under the vortex now begin to be ripped up in a process known as ground scouring, as 3 more homes are completely flattened. Not only is this similar to the damage associated with some of the strongest tornadoes ever, just 200 yards back, the only damage the tornado was able to do was knock over a fence. It's as if as the tornado crossed the road, some supernatural force rapidly fueled the storm. And unless the tornado stopped as quickly as it started, every possible path would bring it directly into Moore, Oklahoma. Michael realizes the gravity of the situation. He watches the tornado continue to tear up the neighborhood, cloaking itself in a cloud of insulation and wood.
It's incredible. I've got it. It's taking on. We're getting major damage. Major damage.
As the tornado moves onwards towards the Canadian River, Michael takes off in pursuit of the tornado, racing it towards Moore. At the same time, all 3 local news stations are broadcasting live views of the intensifying tornado, which has now expanded into a large wedge shape. The broadcasts show the tornado approaching Interstate 44, which stretches over the Canadian River. Beside the interstate is the decommissioned US 62 bridge. Even though this heavy steel bridge is attached to the ground by concrete mounts, as the tornado slams into the interstate, large segments of the bridge are lifted off their mounts and are shunted over the road, blocking the southbound lane on the interstate. The vortex then crosses over a racetrack, mangling everything on the property and eyeing its next set of homes along 157th Street. The core begins to scour the grass, leaving dark streaks along the ground. Only 400 yards away, the homes on Drexel Avenue are the next structures to experience the full wrath of the now monster. Unlike the previous homes that were destroyed, these homes are well-built brick structures, which makes what happens next even more terrifying. The first 4 homes to experience the tornado's wrath are grazed by the north edge of the tornado's core, and yet they still buckle and collapse, only leaving a few walls standing. But the next 2 homes are much less fortunate, being directly impacted by the core. Next to the homes, a grove of trees is completely annihilated, leaving nothing but a pile of debarked trunks, and a car is shredded and thrown into the pile, leaving no trace of its existence apart from an engine block and a mangled part of the frame. The most extreme damage here was actually the southwest home, however. Here, the well-built home is swept off its foundation, leaving a bare foundation slab. It is evident that the tornado is likely very close to EF5 intensity, and now even more homes are in immediate danger. Michael Lynn is still racing the tornado towards more, but he's being slowed down by strong winds and damage.
I'm just following this thing. I feel so powerless. It's gonna take out everything in its path.
The tornado is also starting to drift north, cutting off its path down 149th towards Moore. It's during this jog north, the tornado reaches May Avenue, which marks a neighborhood of very large and well-built homes. Homes this size are much more resilient to tornadic winds than a regular home, but even with the odds stacked in their favor, nothing stands a chance. Cars and trees are once again mangled, and debris is piled and swept, turning the once affluent street into a wasteland. In one home, the residents sought refuge in a bedroom closet, but with the tornado this strength, it's nearly unsurvivable unless you're underground. As the owners are hit, they're hospitalized, but miraculously survive. As the tornado crawls over the neighborhood, the northern edge of the tornado brings down power lines over 149th Street, blocking Michael Lynn's pursuit of the tornado. To reach Moore and his daughter, he reluctantly has to double back and take a different route to continue to race there. At the same time, another car from the other side of the tornado is racing towards it. Nathan Mobley had caught sight of the tornado touching down from within Moore. It is now racing west to get a closer look. As he closes the gap, he approaches the intersection of 164th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. The tornado is now incredibly violent, and the motion is incredible. Nathan watches as the tornado barrels into Foreman Drive. 3 large homes located here are decimated, and their debris is smeared across the ground in a process called windrowing, indicating the core has intensified even more. As the tornado crosses Country Edge Drive, another batch of homes are torn down and windrowed into a creek, and as the tornado barely misses a new development of homes to the north, a collection of 8 oil tanks finds themselves in the path of the tornado. As the core passes over the storage facility, the site is completely decimated. 4 of the massive and heavy oil tanks remain at the site, but another 4 have completely disappeared somewhere inside the tornado. They have now become giant missiles and are being carried further and further away from their origin point. One is dropped over 200 yards away, but the other 3 would remain aloft for much longer. The tornado crosses the intersection of Western and 149th Street and into the Orr family farm in the Celestial Acres horse training area, a large complex of stables, family attractions, and brick buildings. This is where the tornado would arguably cause some of the most extreme damage conceivable. As the tornado closes in on the farm, the forward motion of the tornado slows and almost stalls, allowing the tornado to sit on top of the area. The result of this is almost like a blender. Large brick structures are pulverized, and their debris is windrowed as the vortex edges forwards. Up to 100 horses are killed as their accompanying stables disappear, and a 30-foot propane tank is picked up and lofted, joining the oil tanks that are still in the air. To the south, The tornado's southern edge is just barely impacting part of the Moore suburbs. Only 200 yards separate this neighborhood from the center of the tornado, but extreme damage is inflicted to the roofs and walls of the homes. Luck has run out for the tornado's track towards town, as the Orr family farm was the only thing separating the tornado from the densely populated neighborhoods of Moore. The tornado, now nearly a mile wide, crosses over Western Avenue, marking the end of its journey through scattered properties. What lay ahead was an unbroken grid of homes, businesses, and schools. No more gaps between targets, no more near misses, and first in its path stood Briarwood Elementary. Inside the school, one of the teachers, Robin Jajits, films on her phone as she protects her students from the winds. Entire sections of the school collapse as the roof above them buckles, and one of the oil tanks that was still in the air comes crashing down next to the school. The bathrooms in Briarwood, in nothing short of a miracle, held up to the over 200-mile-per-hour winds, saving every single life in the school. The rest of the building, however, which was constructed out of pure brick and steel, was razed to the ground. The tornado passing the elementary school meant it was now tearing directly through packed homes, and destruction that followed was genuinely mind-blowing. The tornado sweeps or flattens everything in its quarter-mile-wide core. In one home near the school, two sisters, Karina and Sydney Vargas, are killed while sheltering in their bathtub. In another, a mom passed away when her home collapsed over her. Despite the forewarning of the tornado, there's just no way to properly prepare for an EF5 tornado without a shelter. In the Briarwood neighborhood, over 13 homes were completely swept from their foundations, and over 100 were fully destroyed. The propane tank from the Orr family farm lands in the destruction after being in the air for half a mile, while a third oil tank lands near Santa Fe Avenue, over a mile from its origin point. At the time of the tornado survey, the fourth oil tank had not been found. Crossing Santa Fe Avenue, the damage did not cease. Hundreds more homes were destroyed, with some basically turned to powder. The funnel was full of so much debris, trees were basically sandpapered to stubs, and bushes near homes were skinned of their bark. Thousands of cars were also repeatedly lofted and mangled. The tornado's track was deviating here as well, changing from its essentially perfectly straight path to a more northeastern direction. This shift in the path length was far from a good thing, as it was now heading for the Plaza Towers subdivision, where the Plaza Towers Elementary School stood in the very center. As the tornado continued to crawl towards the school, it only seemed to increase in intensity. The ground in a field next to the school began to be scoured away multiple inches deep, and homes not even in the center of the tornado were swept clean, their debris turned into literal powder. It wouldn't be long until the school was completely engulfed by the winds. The school itself consisted of 3 buildings: the main wing of the school, the gymnasium, and an extension of classrooms for the 3rd grade. Unfortunately, the south side of the vortex, where the strongest winds are, sliced directly over the 3rd grade building. As this happened, the eastern wall of the structure collapsed on top of dozens of students and teachers, sadly killing 7 3rd graders. The death toll would make it one of the most lethal tornado impacts on a school ever recorded. The extremity was not just limited to the school, however, as the surrounding neighborhood was completely flattened. Rows of homes to the south of the school were essentially thrown through the air, leaving nothing on the foundations, and even stripping at the tile on the concrete slabs. The devastation in South Plaza Towers would kill 7 other people while they were sheltering in their home, meaning in just a couple of minutes, the tornado had killed 14. Another element that may have contributed to the fatalities here was the appearance of the tornado, as debris and rain shrouded the once photogenic tube, transforming it into an almost mile-wide hazy fog. While very few visible angles of the tornado exist at this point, one civilian, Danny Tracy, was recording from about a mile away. While the tornado is too large to fit into his vertical video, stitching together the shots reveals the massive rain-wrapped monster tearing through Plaza Towers. Even closer, Kim Aguilar and her co-workers filmed the tornado passing from an oil change store. And while the tornado missed them by less than half a mile, a shower of debris filled the air, raining down on the streets and stores.
Back there, look just like this. I was heading to. Let's go, hard again.
Passing Plaza Towers, the path continues to shift to the north, and the damage, while still extreme, shrinks in width. A cemetery is directly hit next, shifting and even tossing massive headstones around and caking them in mud as the ground is continuously scoured away. A tree line to the north is obliterated before the next neighborhood is hit. Homes continue to be turned to powder when suddenly the tornado begins to slow down and turn sharply to the north. In any normal tornado, this would be an indication that it's about to lift, but suddenly, while moving less than 10 miles per hour, the tornado shifts again, making a complete loop over the area. The tornado was far from over. Near the tornado's loop, 4 homes were impacted so heavily their debris essentially disappeared. While no one was in the homes impacted, the vortex unfortunately looped over something else, a gas station where multiple people were taking shelter inside. If a normal EF5 tornado wasn't enough, a nearly stationary one has to be unsurvivable. And unfortunately, 3 people died in the gas station. The loop also had another side effect. The path was now heading southeast, directly towards the Moore Medical Center, the town's hospital. As it ripped through the hospital, cars in and around the building were tossed, thrown, and shredded like toys, in some cases fusing multiple cars into an unrecognizable pulp. The reinforced stone column of the hospital allowed the structure to remain standing. However, almost every window and entryway was blown out, and the entire hospital was caked in mud, debris, and even piles of vehicles. The tornado begins to speed up past the hospital, and as it emerges from the rain, its appearance is very different from before. Now, a tall brown snake of destruction. Multiple businesses are now being flattened as the tornado crosses over the interstate and into more residential areas. The EF5 winds are now in a much tighter area, leading to an almost selective level of damage, as some homes are completely swept away while others remain standing. Crossing a field, a row of industrial buildings lie in the path, and while the worst winds miss the businesses to the south, the weak metal structures hold little support, collapsing and crumbling from the winds. One man, 63-year-old William Sauce, sadly dies in the building he was leasing. As the tornado crosses into the next neighborhood, storm chaser Craig Nichols takes cover inside a random person's home, and he emerges to find, while the structure he was in was fine, just a couple yards down the road, blocks were leveled.
Oh my god. Destroyed it. Oh my god.
To the south, Jeffrey Lekes also records the tornado, just barely missing him. More blocks are raised away as the tornado has now regained an east to northeast direction. The outer windfield and core both steadily shrink, turning into more of a drill into the earth as it continues to level more and more homes. A portion of the Highland East School is completely swept away, luckily with no one inside. And past the school, a park is destroyed and covered in mud. The tornado splinters one last row of homes south of Highway 37 before the packed suburbs of Moore cease. Maintaining a violent intensity, the vortex continues to shrink at a sudden rate. While multiple homes are still being impacted, the terror on the city of Moore is slowly coming to an end, and suddenly, K4 captures the tube, slowly snaking into nothing.
And maybe just the east side of Air Depot Road. There it is. It's gone, Mike. So let's see. We're going to stay right here. We're going to see if it recycles, but it's completely roped out, or it's continuing to rope out as we speak right now. Look at that school, guys. Oh my God, right there. Keep coming back to your left, Travis. Keep coming back to your left. If you guys can see this, I don't know how to explain it, how to describe it. This is terrible. This is war zone.
Moore, Oklahoma is
This
gone.
school-
The damage is inconceivable, arguably worse than 1999. Rescue personnel is stretched thin as a hospital, 3 schools, and over 1,100 homes are completely destroyed. The 2013 Moore tornado was incredibly strong, considered by some to be one of the strongest ever recorded, and the scars are still visible today. Thank you for watching.